Hello everyone and welcome to my session. My name is Michael Stringer and I'm a Principal Domain Solutions Architect specialising in security. This session is titled Scaling Your Environment Securely with AWS Control Tower, a service that provides the easiest way to set up and govern a secure multi-account AWS environment. In this session I'll cover the following topics: the definition of an AWS account and our recommended best practices when designing a multi-account architecture. How to use AWS Control Tower to easily build, deploy and manage your multi-account environment and seamlessly scale it as your organisation grows. We'll have a deeper dive into the deployment options available, including building a new deployment and considerations when enabling Control Tower in an existing set of accounts. We'll then look at some of the new features announced for the service, including nested organisational unit support and data residency controls. I'll then provide a demonstration of deploying a Control Tower environment, including design considerations and an overview of the management controls available in the console. We'll then wrap up the session with guidance on how to find information to guide your adoption of Control Tower securely. First, we'll look at AWS Accounts and our recommendations when creating a multi-account architecture. When you first sign up for AWS, you create an account, and then you start building resources and deploying services within the account as you build your environment. Accounts are essentially resource containers that assist you in managing AWS resources. All customers start their journey with one account, but over time, your account structure will grow based on need. Scaling through account creation is a best practice because it provides many benefits. It enables rapid innovation across distributed teams and individuals. Similar to how you can spin up EC2 instances in minutes, you can create and provision new accounts and AWS resources for teams in minutes. You can deploy or adjust accounts to meet new business processes, such as when you need to define a set of workloads based on operational, regulatory, and budgetary requirements. Costs are incurred at the account level, so activity and costs can be identified with each account. And new accounts reduce the blast radius via isolation. For example, a potential bug in one account is contained within the account itself and cannot impact others. In addition, accounts are natural resource boundaries, where access to one account does not cross over into others without first granting permissions. The important factor to consider when building a multi-account environment is to plan for scalability and ease of management. AWS provides services and best practice guidance, which are the result of helping millions of customers on their journey into the cloud. Foundational management of multiple AWS accounts is provided by AWS Organisations. Organisations provide you with the capability to centrally manage and govern your cloud environment. You can manage and organise your accounts under a single bill, set central policies and configuration requirements for your entire organisation, create custom permissions or capabilities within the organisation, and delegate responsibilities to other accounts so they can manage on behalf of the organisation. Service control policies offer centralized control for AWS account services and features in your organization, allowing you to set the scope of your organization's access control guidelines. Attaching an SCP to an OU defines a guardrail for what actions the accounts within the OU can perform, what services can be used, and also fine-grained access control to service features. For example, you could create an SCP to restrict access to services and regions, as well as preventing disabling of security services. Here is an example of an SCP that prevents AWS CloudTrail logging from being disabled at the account level. Not even an account level administrator can override an SCP. So as mentioned earlier, plan your multi-account structure carefully. Look at the best practice guidance we publish on our website and make informed decisions before deployment. When designing your organisation structure, you could consider creating, at a minimum, 4 foundational OUs: security, infrastructure, workloads, and sandbox. You may need to build an environment that will only permit operating workloads in a specific region. To accomplish this, you will create an SCP that defines which regions are available for AWS accounts to host resources and workloads. This means that any account in the organisation can deploy services only in the specified regions defined in the SCP. You also need a quick and easy way to provision resources and permissions for staff to reduce their ramp-up time. To do this, you can enable AWS Single Sign-On, which can map your company's existing identity provider to provide access to accounts and resources. We also recommend creating a sandbox OU to host accounts that users or teams could use to test services without permission roadblocks, isolated from any of the production environments. You can use resource access management to provision subnets, resolver rules, and other connectivity needs for accounts within the organization, reducing the need to manually set up additional network infrastructure for each added account. To enable auditing and logging, it is possible to activate CloudTrail logging across the entire organization. You may recall that CloudTrail logs record actions taken in your accounts and are a fundamental source of truth for auditing and security. Consider creating accounts specifically to host customer data, which cannot be accessed by anyone unless they meet strict internal guidelines and have a specific use case. You can apply data control policies on that account that, for example, prevent any changes to S3 buckets that store customer data. You also want to make sure that only AWS services you permit can be used by staff. For example, to prevent a developer testing out a new service in a production environment that may accidentally modify their application or change connectivity settings. You can control this via SCPs on each OU, which only allow the AWS services permitted for use. You may be thinking, that seems pretty complicated. How are we going to implement and manage it? This is where AWS Control Tower comes in, a service that helps abstract and automate recommended AWS account best practice tasks. Control Tower is layered on top of organizations and assists you with building and managing a multi-account environment. It uses a combination of automated features from organizations, AWS config, and other services to assist in maintaining guardrails, which could be SCPs or config rules, blueprints to govern items such as your OU and organizational structure, and account vending, or being able to provision new accounts and services in an automated manner. Control Tower is your go-to service to help you build a highly scalable, centrally managed, flexible, and most importantly, secure multi-account architecture. You can automate the setup of your multi-account AWS environment with just a few clicks. The setup employs blueprints that capture AWS best practices for configuring AWS security and management services to govern your environment. Blueprints are available to provide identity management, federate access to accounts, centralize logging, establish cross-account security audits, define workflows for provisioning accounts, and implement account baselines with network configurations. Control Tower helps automate account creation via the Account Factory, a method in which you predefine AWS account templates with your network, security, compliance, and other configuration settings. Users can then be granted permission, depending on their role, to use a self-service model to provision new accounts. A key benefit for using Control Tower is having a centralized single pane of glass for monitoring your entire organization of AWS accounts in one place, with monitoring and compliance settings applied quickly and easily. So using Control Tower, you can have both governance and control of your cloud environment without having to sacrifice agility and innovation. Cloud operations and security teams can govern centrally with policies for security, compliance, operations, and spend management, whilst builders can innovate with self-service access to AWS services. It's governance in parallel to your workflows rather than being a blocker to innovation. Whether you're building out your account structure for the first time with Control Tower or deploying Control Tower to an existing organization, you are gaining access to all of the automation and simplicity benefits that it offers. There are 4 main categories of features that Control Tower unlocks for customers. Centrally provision accounts and resources. Share resources and control access to accounts, regions, and services. Optimize costs and identify cost-saving measures. And secure and audit your environment for compliance. Control Tower enables you to set up an AWS landing zone. Centralize identity and access. Establish guardrails for security, compliance, and operations. Automate compliant account provisioning. And manage this continuously over time. A landing zone is the base architecture or foundation that Control Tower provides to build a multi-account environment. It's a solution that helps you to quickly set up a new AWS environment for multiple accounts. The AWS landing zone solution can save time by automating the setup of your environment in line with AWS best practice recommendations. You receive a baseline environment that gets you started with a multi-account architecture, identity and access management, governance, data security, network design, and logging. Control Tower provides a framework to set up and extend a well-architected multi-account AWS environment based on security and compliance best practices. As part of this framework, Control Tower automatically enables CloudTrail and config and enables centralized logging to an S3 bucket located in a log archive account. Pre-configures Amazon Simple Notification Service topics that other services could subscribe to. Provides federated access to accounts using single sign-on. Enables guardrails to protect the resources deployed by Control Tower and detects non-compliance across multiple accounts. And supports Lifecycle Events, which allow you to configure any additional custom automations as part of new account creation. A best practice security recommendation is to federate AWS account and role access using AWS Single Sign-On, a permissions management tool that offers sign-in with your choice of identity source and centralized permissions management across your AWS accounts. With Single Sign-On, you create tailored, role-oriented permissions in one place. Then you can assign the roles to your users and groups, and just the accounts where they need such access. This significantly reduces the number of roles you need to create across your accounts. With Control Tower, you can configure everything in one place, and then apply them to all of your accounts. Guardrails are pre-configured governance rules for security, compliance, and operations. They are written in plain English and provide abstraction over granular AWS policies. There are two main types of guardrails available in Control Tower. Preventative guardrails, which prevent policy violations through enforcement. They are implemented using AWS CloudFormation and SCPs. And detective guardrails, which detect policy violations and provide alerts in the dashboard. They are implemented using config rules. You can select from mandatory and strongly recommended guardrails for prescriptive guidance. Here are some example guardrails available in Control Tower. Key considerations are to apply rules that enforce security best practices such as encryption, and that detect attempted changes to security settings. Control Tower provides the account factory to govern account provisioning. Account blueprints feature configurable network settings, permitted deployment regions, automatic enforcement of pre-selected account baselines and guardrails, with the accounts created in predetermined OUs. It provides self-service creation of accounts for users via AWS Service Catalog. So how does this work in practice? A Control Tower administrator publishes the account factory as a product to Service Catalog, with settings pre-configured using account blueprints. Service Catalog administrators build portfolios of products based on your organizational needs and grant access to them via roles and groups. Your end users then access only those published products they are permitted to launch and use. This is all done without users needing to have any access to the underlying resource creation and configuration tools. Let's now examine operating with agility and control, which has 4 major topics. You need to monitor and have visibility into how resources and applications are being used and how they are performing. You want to make sure all actions are audited. Everything from how resources are configured, to which users are accessing them, and the policies being enforced. You want to take operational action on resources, logically group them, manage them, and automate operational tasks safely and securely at scale. And of course, you need continuous visibility to optimize and analyze, reduce costs, improve efficiency, and improve and strengthen security posture. As mentioned earlier, Control Tower automatically creates a centralized logging account and configures CloudTrail logging for all of your AWS accounts. Centralized CloudTrail logging provides an immutable, highly secure, and encrypted set of logs in one place, which can be integrated with security partner vendor solutions easily. Logging of actions and events in Control Tower is accomplished automatically through its integration with CloudWatch. All actions are logged, including actions from the Control Tower management account and from your organization's member accounts. Management account actions and events are viewable on the Activities page in the console. Member account actions events are viewable in log archive files. Amazon CloudWatch Events delivers a near real-time stream of system events that describe changes in the AWS resources. CloudWatch Events enables automated event-driven computing as you can write rules that watch for certain events and trigger automated actions in other AWS services when these events happen. This is a great integration point for triggering automated response to security issues. Some events logged by Control Tower are lifecycle events. A lifecycle event's purpose is to mark the completion of certain Control Tower actions that change the state of resources. Lifecycle events apply to resources that Control Tower creates or manages, such as OUs, accounts, and guardrails. AWS Audit Manager helps you continuously audit your AWS usage to simplify how you assess risk and compliance with regulations and industry standards. With Audit Manager, it is easy to assess if your policies, procedures, and activities, also known as controls, are operating effectively. Audit Manager imports guardrail logs from Control Tower and performs additional analysis. Audit Manager annotates that data to generate evidence automatically for the AWS services that are tracked by Control Tower guardrail logs. You can take action on the lifecycle events created by a Control Tower. For each lifecycle event, the event log shows whether the originating Control Tower action completed successfully or failed. CloudTrail automatically records each lifecycle event as a non-API AWS service event. Each lifecycle event is also delivered to the CloudWatch Events service. Because a lifecycle event registers the completion of a Control Tower action, you can create a CloudWatch Events rule that can trigger the next steps in your automation workflow based on the state of the lifecycle event. You can view lifecycle events from the Activities page in your Control Tower dashboard. So here is an example workflow using lifecycle events. A Control Tower administrator launches a new AWS account via Service Catalog. After account creation, the lifecycle event Create Managed Account is written to CloudWatch. The lifecycle event must successfully complete every action before being recorded in the log. A CloudWatch Events rule triggers a Lambda function, which launches a CloudFormation stack, and this customizes the new account with Control Tower blueprint settings as specified in the stack, such as identity and access settings, network configuration, and enabling security services. It is also possible to trigger customisations directly as part of the deployment. The Control Tower dashboard provides a single pane of glass for monitoring activities, reviewing and changing organisational configuration settings, and selecting and deploying guardrails. Let's now look at deployment options when available when using Control Tower. The first common deployment scenario is creating a new multi-account environment for the first time. There are a number of pre-launch checks that will be automatically performed, including making sure that prerequisite service quotas are configured and to confirm whether services such as single sign-on and config have been previously configured for use in your AWS accounts. If so, you may need to make some adjustments to their configuration prior to deploying the new landing zone architecture. A new deployment should take about an hour to complete. If you have existing OUs and accounts that were created outside of Control Tower, you can bring them into Control Tower governance. So for existing organisations and AWS accounts, most customers prefer to enrol groups of accounts by registering the entire OU that contains those accounts. You can also enrol accounts individually. Importing existing accounts and OUs into the new landing zone allows you to extend Control Tower governance into your existing environment. Unify account access with single sign-on, centralise CloudTrail logging, and add preventative and detective guardrails provided via config rules and SCPs. You can easily bring your existing organisation under the centralised control and management of Control Tower, enhancing your security posture. And this means you get a rich set of capabilities to extend governance across your multi-account environments, using services that integrate with organisations. By using Control Tower, you are taking advantage of the automation and simple management provided, whilst leveraging the additional organisation's capabilities that are available to you. You can extend your governance across your multi-account environment using consistent provisioning with CloudFormation stack sets, manage backup with granular policies, and monitor your environments for security threats using tools like Amazon Macie, Amazon GuardDuty, and AWS Security Hub. You get the best of both worlds by combining Control Tower with the extensibility of organisations. The customization framework for AWS Control Tower is a solution published on our website. The solution includes a CloudFormation template you deploy in the administration account where your Control Tower landing zone is deployed. The solution combines Control Tower and other highly available trusted AWS services to help customers more quickly set up a secure multi-account environment using AWS best practice. Before deploying this solution, you must have a Control Tower landing zone deployed in your account. You can easily add customisations to your Control Tower landing zone using a CloudFormation template and SCPs. You can deploy the custom template and policies to individual accounts and OUs within your organisation. This solution integrates with Control Tower Lifecycle Events to ensure that resource deployments stay in sync with your landing zone. For example, when a new account is created using the Control Tower Account Factory, the solution ensures that all resources attached to the account's OUs will be automatically deployed. AWS Marketplace now offers a new category of solutions to help you to integrate third-party software with Control Tower. These solutions help solve key infrastructure and operational use cases, including identity management, security for a multi-account environment, centralized networking, operational intelligence, and security information and event management. This is a great way to extend security controls and governance into your AWS accounts using trusted security vendor partner solutions that you may already be using today on premises. Let's now look at a couple of recent feature launches. Control Tower now supports nested OUs in the organization's account structure. Nested OUs provide further customization between groups of accounts within OUs, giving you more flexibility when applying policies for different workloads or applications. With nested OUs, you can attach guardrails to the OUs instead of directly to each account. This becomes an important scaling mechanism as you add accounts in your Control Tower environment, as policies applied at the OU level automatically apply to all accounts within the OU. In the Control Tower console, governance status of each OU is representative of the status for the OUs nested beneath it in the hierarchy. Recommended best practice is to start with the foundational OUs I talked about at the start of this presentation. Then create nested OUs for lifecycle management of your workloads, for example, dev, test, and prod. Under each lifecycle OU, you can create partition OUs for easy scaling out to hundreds or even thousands of accounts. We recommend partitioning OUs where you expect hundreds of accounts, like workload and sandbox OUs. Establishing a fixed OU size provides your organisation with a predictable registration and update duration, which helps you balance security and operational overhead. Data residency is a requirement to store or process data in a particular geographic location. Control Tower now provides a region deny feature, as well as new guardrails to provide more control over the physical location of where customer data is stored and processed. This is great news for our customers operating in highly regulated environments, such as financial institutions and public sector agencies. The new guardrails prevent provisioning resources in unwanted AWS regions by restricting access to AWS APIs for SCPs built and managed by Control Tower. Content cannot be created or transferred outside of your selected regions at the infrastructure level. With Control Tower's new data residency guardrails, you can choose from 17 new guardrails that are purpose-built to enable data residency controls, such as disallow Amazon Virtual Private Network connections, or disallow internet access for an Amazon VPC instance. You can see the compliance status of the guardrails and whether your data residency requirements are being met in the Control Tower console. Let's now view a demonstration of deploying a new landing zone with Control Tower, and an overview of the management settings and guardrails available to help administer your multi-account environment. First, I'll show you a demonstration of creating a new account landing zone in a new AWS account using AWS Control Tower. Note that you can deploy Control Tower in an existing account structure as well. However, please make sure to read our documentation and plan carefully before committing to use Control Tower. We click on Setup Landing Zone. On the Review Pricing and Select Region screen, you choose your home region, which will normally be set to your closest AWS region. Choose carefully. Changing your home region after you've deployed the Control Tower landing zone requires decommissioning, as well as the assistance of AWS support, and is not recommended. There is an option here as well to configure the region deny guardrail. If you need to restrict access to certain regions due to regulatory requirements, you can specifically block regions from being available. Note that you can change this setting later, but make sure you don't already have resources deployed in a region you set to deny, as you won't be able to access them. You can select multiple regions to govern. If you forget, don't worry. You can add more regions at a later time, or even remove them later if required. We'll now click on Next. On the Configure Organizational Units screen, you can set the names of foundational OUs. By default, 2 top-level OUs are created, Security and Sandbox. You can optionally change the name of the Security OU and create an additional OU, Sandbox as suggested, by Control Tower. You can change the OU names at a later date if you change your mind. Click on Next to continue. On the Configure Shared Accounts and Encryption screen, you can do the following. Set an email address for the Log Archive account and change the account name if you wish. Set an email address for the Audit account and optionally change the account name. Note that setting the Log Archive and Audit account names here is a one-time decision and cannot be changed later. Enable AWS Key Management Service encryption. Put a check in the box, and you can also click on Create a KMS key, which will create a new customer managed key to be used by Control Tower for tasks such as encrypting logs. Note that this will take you to the KMS console to create the new key. For the purposes of this demo, I will not be creating a KMS key. Click on Next to continue to the Review screen. On the Review page, you can check the configuration. When you are happy, put a tick in the box to confirm you understand that Control Tower will use permissions granted during setup to manage accounts and resources. Click on Set Up Landing Zone. The landing zone would take about an hour to create. Now it has been created, let's take a tour. Here on the Control Tower dashboard, we can see our environment settings. At the top, we can add or register more OUs, configure our automated AWS account factory, enable more guardrails, review and configure user access to our AWS accounts, and review settings of shared accounts. We now have 2 organizational units and 3 accounts created. We have the top-level Security and Sandbox OUs, and an Audit, Log Archive, and Control Tower management account. There are 20 preventative guardrails and 2 detective guardrails deployed. To conclude the presentation, let's summarize what has been covered. I'll also discuss some resources to help with your planning. So, to summarize, planning is key before launching a new Control Tower deployment. Design an OU structure that is going to work for your organization and is flexible for future requirements. You need to carefully research and design your desired multi-account architecture, including security service integrations. Examine the guardrails available and decide what makes sense for particular OUs and AWS accounts. Automate account deployments using the account factory and provide self-service account provisioning to staff. Remember, you can use Lifecycle Events as triggers via CloudWatch events to provide further customisations. Look at deploying the customization framework solution. Use the new data residency and region deny controls for regulated environments. And review our available best practice guidance and documentation, including recent blog posts. If you need additional help, consider the following areas. The Management and Governance Lens is a companion to the AWS Well-Architected framework. It identifies an essential set of interoperable functions that outline implementation priorities customers should evaluate to make sure they are migration ready, scale ready, optimized for efficiency, and innovation ready. The AWS Partner Network has consulting partners available who are skilled and experienced with building Control Tower deployments. AWS Professional Services can help you to design and deliver a best practice landing zone of accounts. And AWS Managed Services can do the heavy lifting for you by managing your AWS account environment on your behalf. Here are some great references to help you get started. Just scan the QR codes to be taken to the web links. As your organisation develops next-gen cloud-native applications and modernises existing workloads by migrating to the cloud, you will need to gain visibility and security that integrates within your workflows to maintain a high bar on your AWS security posture with operational efficiency. Learn how native AWS security services can help you raise your security posture with operational excellence. You can integrate foundational AWS security services to achieve continuous threat detection, route workflow, and minimise remediation time. Your SecOps and DevOps teams can unify visibility and automate responses to help them achieve operational excellence in securing cloud environments and cloud-native applications. Enable AWS security services such as Amazon Guard Duty, AWS Security Hub, Amazon Inspector, Amazon Detective, and Amazon Macie. Apply them to different use cases to centralized threat detection and monitoring, security posture assessment, vulnerability management, root cause analysis, and sensitive data discovery. You can initiate and route workflows to existing ticketing systems, prioritize critical findings, and automate remediation. To continue your cloud journey, please use these training resources. So for help with planning and executing a best practice AWS account strategy, please engage with your account team today. I'm Michael Stringer. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and thank you for watching. We really value your feedback to help us improve our sessions, so please share your rating.